Thanks everyone for joining our session. We are going to be doing a panel session. I want to keep this as interactive as possible. So at certain points, I will ask you if you have any questions or if you have any comments. And we have Maria in the back, and she'll come up to you with a microphone, and you can add an opinion or ask a question of our panel. We do have three individuals that I'm very happy that have joined us on the panel. And all of us here on the panel have experience in the travel and tourism sector, and more specifically in the destination marketing field. We are going to be talking about destination brands, but the more holistic, encompassing field of how destination brands can attract a higher value tourist to a destination or an attraction. I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves when I ask them questions in about 3 or 4 minutes. These are their names up on the screen. But if you could just wave, we've got Joe from Skylit Intelligence. We have Olaf from Red Sea Development Corporation, and Swetha from the Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Development Authority. And my name is Oliver Martin, and I'm a partner with 2031 Consulting. We are all here in the room because we understand the potential of tourism. Tourism isn't just about bringing people to a destination. It's very much about economic development and community and development. Tourism in our business drives trade. Tourism is also very important because it expands our horizons as civilizations. It allows societies to interact and allows us as a global community to grow. Our industry, though, and it's a positive and a negative, is at a crossroads. In 2012, we had around 1 billion international tourists. That's people from Saudi traveling to Oman, people from America going to Thailand, people from India going to Japan. That number, by the year 2031, will double to 2 billion international tourists. That's a phenomenal opportunity for all of us in the room. At the same point, it presents a number of sustainability challenges. That number, to get from 1 billion that we achieved in 2012 to 2 billion by 2031, means an extra 43 million international tourists traveling internationally every year. Most of that growth is happening in Asia Pacific, with the lion's share of that growth happening from China. Most of our destinations here have a China strategy, whereas 10 years ago and 15 years ago, we didn't even look at the China market. China is very much a dynamic force in our industry because it's forcing us as corporations, as destinations, as marketers, to really reevaluate our destination mix. But not all tourism is the same. There's good tourism and there's bad tourism. And it's our challenge as marketers to really understand the types of tourism that we want to start attracting. 3 major trends we are seeing in our industry that's driving that growth. The first one is, last year in 2018, was the first year that the boomer market actually was surpassed by the millennial market. The millennials now are the largest demographic audience in our industry. The second biggest trend that we are seeing is that shift to more local, authentic-based tourism. And that's why 10 years ago, none of us in the room would have known about Airbnb. But now, we are starting to see Airbnb as one of the largest hotel companies in the world with an actual hotel stock. And it's again that concept of living local and experiencing local while you're on vacation. And the third trend, and again, it's been with us for the last 20 or so years, is how technology is really evaluating and changing how we interact with destinations. From a planning perspective, from a booking perspective, and now more increasingly, how we communicate our destination experience to our friends and family networks, and then cause that virtuous cycle in the path to purchase. And sorry, those are the 3 trends that I was just speaking about right there. From a destination branding perspective, and this is the data that my colleague Joe at the end of the table looks at, we have seen the importance of destination brands and helping stimulate interest in a destination. This is a destination ranking index that we do called TravelView. You'll see here a bunch of destinations and how they're perceived in terms of their being a leader in terms of a destination product, an up-and-coming destination, or hidden gem. And we can get into a little bit more detail on that based on the panel. We've got 3 sets of questions that we're going to go through. The first thing, talking about destination trends that impact brands, how we define best practice of destination branding, and then the third concept of what we see in terms of the future, crystal ball gazing in terms of this industry and how destination brands will interact. We're going to try to make this conversation as relevant as possible to all of you in the room. I know there's some people here that are from investment companies, hoteliers, tour operators, destination marketing boards. So we'll try to keep the conversation as relevant as possible to all of you, and we're going to get right into the discussion. I'm probably going to ask someone at the back if you could just tell me when we've got 5 minutes left so we don't go over, and we'll try to keep the conversation going. So I'm going to ask the first question actually to Olaf. And this is really about the relevance of destination brands. So we are very much in a media environment of 24/7 news. And given that dynamic nature of that marketing and that communications that's happening as consumers, the first question I'm going to ask to Olaf is, are destination brands still relevant in this type of environment?
If you think about, we first have to define what a destination brand is, because I think that sometimes people look upon brands as just from the view of the end product, the logo or the final visualization, whereas a destination brand is actually a concatenation of the characteristics of the destination. Its truth, its authenticity, the natural, cultural, community-based and asset-based characteristics that together make a destination and a possible experience for the visitor. Now, this means that in this day and age of 24/7 digital and social media, it means that the truthfulness and authenticity of a brand cannot be overemphasized, and it means also that these in-depth destination brands, where you deep dive into the characteristics of the destination before projecting an image, so you're building upon the true assets, they've never been more relevant than now, because at the end of the day, as you say, everybody's traveling. We're projecting 1.3 billion travelers in 2030, and this actually means that destinations don't need everybody. They need the people that will truly sense and experience, the destination that they visit. So they need the people that are interested in your product, and you don't have to refine the product, or you don't have to create a product in a destination from scratch. You need to build upon what the destination has, because at the end of the day, people will be visiting a place with all its complexities, and that's what the seasoned traveler wants. And I think that digital and social media projects this, whether we want it or not. So the day of being able to, fake your way through marketing as a tourism destination, those days are over, because at the end of the day, it's the visitor who projects the marketing. So it's, almost out of our hands sometimes.
Joe, I'm going to ask you to comment on that. I'm going to get it switch up.
Yeah, so completely agree with everything that Olaf just mentioned. And I think that there's a fine balance that usually needs to be found in terms of how you think about a brand as well. Because, and I think you touched on a couple of things, so on another side of that, one can almost even think the brand itself is, or having a brand is dead in a way. And I know some of you may agree, may not agree, and what I'm trying to say about that is, I think it's important to have a brand, so how you define it is really important, and how you message it, that needs to come from the marketers itself. But at the end of the day, what's happening, especially with technology and what we're seeing in the data as well, is that who is really making the decision on brands outside of pricing are people who have visited the locations, relatives, and things like that. So, does that mean that the brand and the key messages that were created mean anything? Sometimes no, but yet you still need that so that you make sure that the entire team is geared towards, especially the marketing team is geared towards everything that you're trying to do. So it's a different paradigm that we're in right now in terms of brands and how to think about that.
Okay, so Joe, I'm going to pick up on that point about personalization. Okay, Olaf, go ahead.
Just if I can interject, it also means that you really, as a marketer, you really, really need to know your destination. You need to know it, almost better than you know your loved ones, because at the end of the day, you need to project the truth of the destination in all your marketing. And so the brand becomes, it becomes the holistic, characterization of the destination, and marketing must stop being maybe the horse that draws the wagon and become part of the wagon, because marketing is part of management at the end of the day. because your product is telling the message through the social and digital media,
Yeah.
and you can't really do that in a sort of siloed marketing way.
Yes, absolutely, and I think what you just mentioned comes down to sort of my own opinion or my own theory as well for many destinations is as opposed to spending a lot of time thinking about the brand and how are we going to communicate something. I mean, you still have to do that, but the most important thing and the most important aspect of the brand is that authenticity. Is how well you actually portray the experience and the quality of your destination.
Okay, so Joe, I'm going to ask
sorry.
Sweetcha to jump in on this.
Yeah.
So Olaf, you mentioned truth. Joe, you mentioned authenticity. So this is the second question. How can destinations make their brands more personal for the type of consumer they want?
So I think this is an interesting. Did I get it closer? I think this is an interesting one because the more we try to attract, and Olaf touched upon this, everybody can't travel everywhere, and we don't want everybody to come to the same destination. It is about giving people, understanding what people want and giving them those experiences. Ras Al Khaimah, for instance, we position ourselves as an authentic Arabian destination. It's a boutique destination. We don't want to attract the masses. We're actually one of the few people who don't have a China strategy in place, to put it that way. But we know we're going after people who are looking for adventure, who are looking for something to connect with nature, to connect with an Arabian destination away from or complementing what the other Emirates have to offer.
So Sweetcha, I don't want to be controversial, but and I totally understand that strategy. But if you look at many of the destinations in this environment, they still have the all-inclusive resorts,
Yes.
the bus tours, and so is there a dynamic at play between the trying to be an authentic destination and presenting that image, but then trying to fill the hotels and the bums and seats?
So I think it's a mix of both. I think the travelers now are starting to move away from just staying in their hotels. While there is a bunch of travelers still and a generation who want to go and the relaxation for them is a definition of staying in a hotel, getting some sun, getting some good food and beverage, and that's it. But then there's other generations who want to now go out and explore the world that they live in. They want to know and they want to connect with the locals that they're in, the destination they're in. They want to see the mountains they can climb. They want to see the camels in the desert. So there is a growing aspect of that. It's an important, both as a tourist destination board, the DMCs and the hotels and all the operators working in the destination to make sure that ecosystem comes together. Because you can't have one or the other. Of course, everybody has revenue targets to meet. The hotels want people in their rooms. The DMCs want people out doing stuff. At the end of the day, when I go back to things about digital and social media, all of that comes together as a projection of the destination. If I only get images of beautiful hotels from my destination, but that's not authentic. That's just not it. That's one part of the whole picture. So yeah, it is very important for them to work together.
Olaf?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that at the end of the day, people today and the seasoned travelers that we are all trying to attract, the people who are discerning, who are environmentally responsible, who know what they want and are willing to, to pay for their expectations to be met. Those are the people who are looking for a holistic experience. And talking about personalization, I think that they also want to have the feeling, at least I know I do, they also want to have the feeling that they have had some part in creating their experience, and sort of, so they're not just sitting on a bus going from place to place, laying in their hotel rooms and being told what they're seeing, but they're having an impact on what they do. And that's become a challenge or became a challenge for travel agencies that then needed to become maybe more travel facilitators than agencies, in a sense.
So this is the third question then.
Yeah.
You in the room, how many of you are suppliers? So hotels or tour operators or attractions? You can just raise your hand. Yeah, there's a few of you. How do suppliers or operators effectively leverage a destination brand? So if it's a tourism department, Ras Al Khaimah Tourism, Red Sea Development Corporation, if you are projecting a destination image or a destination brand to attract a certain type of traveler, how can the suppliers and the operators in the room take advantage of that?
I think, going back to your China intervention and the fact that Ras Al Khaimah doesn't have a China strategy.
Yes.
No, but I think that it actually touches upon something that goes back to the tour operators and travel agencies, because obviously you have, well, let's call them travel facilitators as an overarching concept. You have people that are obviously specialized in individual geographical locations. However, I think that as a destination, you start leveraging yourself not against the different geographical locations, but before you go down there, you define, as I say, you define what your destination is, what are its characteristics, what does it have to offer, and then you go down and you say, so what segments are interested in that? Who do I want to attract? And from there, you go down into the different geographical locations and you say, so in this location, how best do I reach that market? And that's where the specialized tour operators come in. And again, because I don't think it can be overemphasized, in the day and age of everybody wanting to travel and a larger and larger percentage of the global population seeing travel and international travel is just part of their life's quality, destinations don't need to have to attract everyone. They can build upon their characteristics because I'll bet you anything, there's enough people for your purposes that will be interested, as long as you package it based on authenticity, on a good story, and on pride in what you stand for and who you are.
So,
Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to, I totally agree with what everyone is saying at the table over here. And I think we're coming to a point where it's important to, how you get that information is it's out there. There's a lot of data out there that helps you understand what we call drivers and what are the drivers. And actually, it's not like every destination has its own drivers. The entire industry has a group of a dozen or so drivers, whether it's restaurants or beaches or shopping or whatever it may be, that exist. I think the question is, how do you understand what it is that your destination has to offer from a driver perspective, how that compares to regional competitors, because that also plays a huge role. And then from there, you develop the strategies that Olaf and Svecha were talking about earlier, whether it's travel trade or whatever it is. So it's important to understand the data, the drivers, to make those decisions.
Sorry, the question. Yeah, please. Sorry, there's a question up here at the front. Oh, hold on for 1 second.
Yeah, my name is Rahul Jagtiani. I'm from India, and I'm part of the media. I produce and I host a travel show, and I also cover various destinations in the press. And one of the challenges I see, building upon what you just said, is that, for example, in the Middle East, I was in Oman about 10 days ago, and I don't know what the other regional players in that area offer that's different from Oman. So I've seen the camels, I've seen the deserts, I've seen the Bedouins, and I've done a bit of adventure and diving and all of that. So I want to know what else, what can Ras Al Khaimah do, or what can, Sharjah or any of the other Bahrain, what can they do to sort of differentiate from that particular experience?
So this wasn't a setup question, but honestly, I was going to ask this question of the panel. So Raul gets free chocolate after the panel. Yes. Okay, so this is a darn good question. I'm just going to contextualize it for a second and ask our panel to jump in. If you walk this hall, there's some phenomenal booths. And if you close your eyes and you open your eyes and you don't look at the name of the destination, you see desert, you see fabulous beaches, you see souks, you see camels, and it becomes very hard as a consumer, let alone an unaware consumer, to really understand the USPs, the unique selling points of that destination. So then it becomes very easy to swap it in Oman for another destination. And nothing against these destinations, because we've all traveled through them. They're all amazing. But in the eyes of a consumer, what's different, or how do you elevate that? And so I'd like
start
you to speak.
with that,
Yeah,
because
first.
Oman's very close to us, so I can answer that one. We share the same mountains, so that's a start. I think it comes down to, and this goes back to two things we've mentioned earlier. One, what the brand stands for. There is a clear USP that you have to try and communicate, and that takes time to get built up and awareness to be reached, to actually stick in a consumer's mind. There are a lot of similar destinations out there. I mean, even the beach destinations of the world overlap with each other. At the end of the day, it's still a very consumer-driven market. You can choose, I can choose to go to Cyprus, I can choose to go to Greece, I can choose to go to Thailand. It depends. They're all beach destinations. For us, at the same time, it's where the DMCs and the tour operators, those facilitators, as Olaf called them, they come into play. Because if they keep adopting a cookie-cutter approach to the same thing and offering city tours or offering bus tours in every single destination, you can't show off the destination. We offer things where you can go hiking in the mountains with the local tribes who don't speak any English. They barely speak any English. Their Arabic differs from one tribe to the other. So it's a very different, very local experience that you can have. But it really comes down to those people who you're going out and exploring the destination with. So there might be similarities geographically, culturally, but how you present it to the audience and what you take back from it.
And deliver on that experience.
And deliver on that is a huge thing of everybody in that whole ecosystem in the destination.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the holistic characterization, as I said before, of the destination, where you gather everything you have and you try to, well, tie it together with a ribbon that promotes the singularity of it, is very important. But then again, going back to what you were saying, just to mention, it's the communities, it's the stories that you have, it is the place, the sense of place and history and the people that have lived there and the journeys that have been led there. Those things can make you stand out because, at the end of the day, yes, there are camels and there are Bedouins and there's a tent and there's a mountain and there's sea. But at the end of the day, people are looking for something that is personalized, but also that is authentic and that tells a story that they haven't heard before. And many people want to come back and feel that they've learned something, either about themselves through the interactions with other people, or about the destination itself from a cultural point of view. And I think that is so important. It's getting that engagement and immersion in some way. And that is, of course, the challenge of the destination branding at the end of the day.
Well, what I love about what you just said is there are some nuggets of information in those stories that when visitors do come back home and they tell their friends and family, but guess what? There's actually a way to capture that information because of technology and the social media use right now. And so it's just amazing the kind of information we can find out about what's so special about your destination just from looking at social media, even if you take away all the other data sources. And to be honest, I don't think enough destinations do that well in terms of really learning
Evidence-based decisions.
Yeah,
we don't in this industry.
Exactly. Learning what's out there. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we've got a question in the back, but a quick story. Yeah, I started my career at the Canadian Tourism Commission, and we would make decisions honestly based on where Air Canada flew. So we had to open a route to Brazil because Air Canada flew there, and we didn't look behind the data to understand that most of the Brazilians coming up to Canada were visiting friends and family, and were spending nothing in the destination. So the importance of data. So we have a question in the back.
Hi, my name is Mohammed from Saudi Airlines.
Yep.
My question, well, I've got a couple. Number one, in your opinion, what makes a successful destination, right? Not just in terms of perception, but overall. And the other question was, how do you balance between authenticity, like you mentioned, and making an organized experience? Because it's for a destination like, let's say, Paris or London, Rome, established destination with history and everybody knows about them, etc. They grew organically, right? But especially in the Middle East, let's say specifically to Saudi Arabia, how do you tell all those stories? I mean, yes, it's good and it's important that we create those niche experiences like you were mentioning, the hiking, etc. But to get someone to Saudi Arabia, for example, I wouldn't tell them, oh, come do hiking or meet the locals in the mountains. They're not going to fly all the way from China or India or Europe for specifically that experience. So how do you balance between authenticity and providing an organized experience?
Okay.
Because they're not going to come here just for a city tour. Everybody's seen enough of those hop-on, hop-off buses. Yes, they help, yes, but again, they sort of contradict authenticity.
Okay. Mohammed, right? Okay, so we're going to start with your second question, and I think Olaf wants to start.
It's a really good question actually, because everybody's looking for authenticity. But having been the director of the Icelandic tourist board for 10 years, I do realize that nobody really wanted to come visit me on a Monday evening and eat boiled cod with potatoes. That's not really, even though that's really authentic, that's what everybody does. So I think that at the end of the day, you're always in some way creating an experience. I mean, you're offering kapsa, but you're not only offering kapsa, the way that you yourself would do it at home. You're offering kapsa in a way that projects a story towards the visitor. And I would say that the thing you said about that nobody's going to fly over to Saudi Arabia to do this and that. Well, I actually think that people will. Yeah. I think that people are very, very curious about new destinations, about new cultures, about being able to immerse themselves in it, as long as I say, they don't end up sitting in my living room eating boiled cod for 2 weeks. You have to it's sort of like theater or ballet. You have to choreograph the whole experience and the whole customer journey, but in a way that it still feels authentic. And that is the challenge, but it's the fun challenge also.
I want to add on to that. Yeah, I think you have to realize that people are changing their mindsets about why they travel. As Olaf said, people are looking for new destinations. They're looking for new experiences. We have the world's longest zip line, for instance. We know people fly in specifically just to do the zip line. They will come in, fly in, do that, and that's it. That's their bucket list experience, and it's done. They might not even spend more than 2 days in the destination. On the other hand, I have people who come in for 3 to 4 days and spend all their day at the beach, and that's all they're there for. But what inspired them to come to Ras Al Khaimah in the first place? What were the stories we told them? And then when they're in the destination, how do we make sure they have the option to actually go out and do them? Yeah. Because you have to give people a little bit more motivation and incentive to actually go out and explore everything that your destination has to offer. Yeah. And it's very important you also know which niches you're targeting. Yeah. If you're targeting people who are interested in a particular cultural form of product, you need to make sure you have the ecosystem to support it and that they can actually experience it the way you want them to tell the rest of the world about it.
And I wanted to go
Olaf, in 1 second.
Yeah?
Because we only have 50 minutes left, and so we have a bunch of questions to go through.
I just wanted to answer his first question.
Oh.
What makes a good destination?
Mohammed,
I think that's also a very important question.
Yeah.
Because a good destination, when you look at a destination, and it's sometimes funny when you look at marketing a destination, because at the end of the day, yes, you need to market the destination to your consumers, but you also need to market the destination and the marketing of the destination to the destination itself. Because at the end of the day, there are people that live there, there are all sorts of stakeholders with wishes and feelings towards what it is you're doing and in what way you're projecting it. So a good destination takes all this into account. So it sends out, an authentic but choreographed message about the place that you're marketing. At the same time, it truly benefits the local economy, the local people. It's participatory, so that people feel that they have ownership of the sector within the destination. It's environmentally responsible, and it has stakeholders that take responsibilities at each level, be they locals, be they travel agents, be they other operators, be they government, because government is really important. So a good destination takes all the different stakeholders, calls on their responsibilities, and projects an experience to everybody involved, also the hosts, because that's, at the end of the day, what we're aiming for, is a vibrant sector that is a business, that benefits the people that are, affected by it.
Just to add to that question, the question a little bit as well, I think, first of all, we were all invited for boiled corn at your house. So no, but I think those are the types of authentic experiences that are really important. And I think to also frame what you said in a different way, it comes down to making sure that the things that you do, that you decide to do, that you decide to share those experiences with tourists, is doing that really well and really focusing on that quality. And you do that by establishing responsibility throughout the community and the government, et cetera. And that's a huge role that that marketers play in this in this
So we have
area.
a question over here. So I'm going to get to you 1 second, okay? I do want to ask a question about influencers. Many destinations out here have an influencer strategy, or they don't, but they still invite influencers in. or influencers invite themselves and I want a free hotel night and I'll sell your destination for you. How can a destination marketing board or a tour operator or hotel effectively work with an influencer, given that an influencer might have their own agenda because they are really selling their personal brand versus a destination brand or experience? So I'm going to ask you to...
I'm going to go with this one first because we get a lot of those requests. We're very picky.
Probably too many.
Too many. The good part of that is people come because they've heard of some certain experiences that they want to try out and market, which is a great thing because that goes to say what we're trying to communicate as stories is coming across to these people. But we're picky when it comes to who we work with because it's important to be seen as genuine still. You don't want to be seen as somebody who's got millions of followers, is paid for 2 posts, and then goes to another destination and does the
exact same thing. Yeah.
Our strategy is we're picky. We had Will Smith who came and did his bucket list experience. We didn't invite him; he just turned up, and which is great.
It's hard not to say no to Will Smith.
Say no to Will Smith, but he can come back. But we do get certain markets that we work with. We get them, but we're picky. We've started working with micro-influencers, so people with 10, 20,000 followers on certain platforms who come and experience it with their families because we talk about family destinations, as couples do some hiking, whatever their focus is. But also a lot more on user-generated content. So it's actual people, their stories, whether they have 5 followers or 15 or 20,000, it doesn't matter. It's sharing those stories because that's telling the tales of your destination,
For sure.
rather than being seen as somebody who's paid money to do that.
Yeah. Raul?
Yeah.
Raul over here in the front.
Yeah, hi. This may sound a bit controversial, and no offense meant
No,
to anyone.
please.
But
Be controversial.
yeah,
Within the confines of these walls.
is there room for dark tourism? Which means there are certain regions, and this comes from a personal interest of mine and a desire to sort of live life on the edge. So if I want to go to the Pakistan-Afghanistan border and shoot an AK-47 in the air, or if I want to go to Sicily and see where the mob came from, is there room for those sort of really out there experiences that a tourism board or a DMC can leverage? I know this is a little controversial, but just curious.
So we're going to move quickly on this question. I can tell you that a destination like Cambodia, for instance, has had dark tourism for years.
Yeah.
You go outside of Phnom Penh and you can pick up what you said and do your thing, and that's it. There's always going to be niche products. Honestly, there will always be niche products. But going back to Mohammed's point, what are the unique selling points of a destination? And maybe we stick to our knitting. Stick to what we're good at. I'm going to move ahead on that question. Are there any other questions, or can I go ahead on the next panel set of questions? Okay. Evaluating a destination brand. Why is it important? Is it important? And how often should we do it? And Joe?
Well, obviously, my background is, of course, it's important. And not just evaluating the brand, but also monitoring that. And again, with what exists out there today, you can do that live. I mean, there's no reason to wait a couple of weeks or a couple of months to find out how people felt about you before. There are ways to get that information live on your destination right now. So super important. And I think that also answers your second question of how often to do that. Again, yes, you have the monthly, quarterly, yearly reports, but you also need to be on top of the data on a daily basis. I mean, last thing you want is someone to say something negative about your destination and not having some sort of prepared response or strategy about how to respond to that. So, I'll start there without getting into too many of the details, but happy to get into some of the details of how you do that as well.
Olaf, maybe you can speak about your experience at Iceland Tourism Board.
Yes, I think that it is very important to evaluate. And as you say, you can almost do it in real time now, but you also need to define, just from a cost effective, you being the researcher, you would want to research all the time, but from a cost effectiveness point, you want to evaluate how relevant it is to do. Some things are relevant definitely in real time, some things are better evaluated on a regular basis. However, I think that the value from evaluation is it comes because I think that at the end of the day, And that was our experience in Iceland when we were monitoring and surveying visitor expectations versus experiences. The fact of the matter was that if the experiences matched the expectations, then everybody was happy. And it also, all sorts of surveys and evaluations, they also helped us send a message to the individual sectors within tourism. I mean, and also to the governmental entities. I mean, where do we need to strengthen? Where are we doing good? What, is the messaging coming across? Do people feel that we're, putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to, for example, environmental responsibility? And I think those things are very important because at the end of the day, people are willing to pay premium price for a premium experience. People do not necessarily confuse quality with luxury, because a quality bed and breakfast or a quality hostel, can be a very, very nice experience depending on the price range and your experiences, and it can also be a bad quality.
It's the concept
hostel.
of value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a horrible experience, and that at the end of the day defines it. If you expected a good hostel and you get a bad one, that's bad. If you expected a good 5-star hotel and you get a bad one, that's bad. So the expectations need to match the experience on all levels. Also, and just because we haven't mentioned that a lot, that also comes to human resources, because at the end of the day, a luxury travel experience does not necessarily translate into whether the faucets were made of gold. It translates into, did I have good, knowledgeable guides who could tell me where I was, could portray the story? Did I get good food that was based on local values? Did the front of line human resources or people I interacted with from the tourism sector, did they fulfill what I needed them to fulfill? And we can't forget that, because at the end of the day, tourism is an industry of interaction, however smart we want to be as a destination.
Just wanted to add to that as well, just so that it's also clear from a research perspective, whether you're a destination board or hotelier or in real estate development or anything like that, you need data for sure. And the good news is, again, because of the abundance of data that's out there and the technology that exists, the data, you don't have to pay too much for it if you want the low end of the data and still get real good understanding of what's going on. So, we, for example, run digital listening efforts for as low as $10,000, and you still get a really good view of what's going on. But then, of course, that ranges all the way up to $3 million if you want the whole shebang, and people on site who are there monitoring and letting you know when things are going to happen before they actually happen in terms of monitoring. So there's really a wide range, and I think, as Olaf mentioned, it just depends on where you are as a destination. Internal capabilities as well is really important. We usually find that there's a gap in terms of gathering the information and being able to analyze it and to derive
and then execute on
insights. Exactly. So, when you do that, last point, you want to make sure that you have the capabilities or hire someone who also has the ability to give you the insights, not just the data. And that's a mistake that we see a lot, is a lot of people get the data, it looks really great, it's an infographic with a lot of shiny graphs and things like that, but what does it tell you at the end of the day? Probably not much. It's those insights, those recommendations that you get from experts who have done that kind of work in several different destinations, where you really get the real benefit of that data.
So this is really the difference between a successful destination and a non-successful destination. Successful destinations make evidence-based decisions as much as possible.
Absolutely.
We're going to move along. We only have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So destination brands are obviously evolving as technology is evolving. I'm going to ask you this question. Where is destination branding heading?
I think it's about making sure your brand is relevant to the customers you're on the channels they want to see you on.
Relevance.
So it's about saying, targeting those ads, and we've gotten so much data, and as Joe very correctly, but it's not just having the data, but understanding it, executing decisions on it, and doing it in real time. There is ways of doing radio on digital radio, targeting your ads to specific people who are listening to it, and changing your ads based on what they're listening to. So all of that sort of smart insight-based learning and evidence-based decisions are important to evaluate, sort of growing your brand and making sure it's still relevant to the people who should be seeing it.
And this is really the importance of a good, solid, engaged destination marketing board, because the tourism operators that are here, the hoteliers, the attractions, they're very much consumed with filling the next quarter or the next day or the next hour. It really comes up to the destination marketing board being able to help them make these kind of decisions.
I think it's also, I think it's also it's the tourism board's responsibility to sort of start looking at where are we looking at things, growing new markets, looking at 18 months out, 24 months out, where are we going to get those customers from? Where are they in their journey right now? How can I inspire them, make sure they get to where I want them to be in 24 months? Because as you said, you've got all these operators who are very busy and consumed with trying to fill their rooms or trying to fill their tours and getting the revenue targets that they need. But overall, our job as a destination board is to make sure the destination is still relevant to everybody who sees it.
Olaf?
Where the destination branding is heading.
Yeah.
I think that, going back to the holistic approach, I think that destination branding will become more and more part and parcel of an overall destination management plan or approach, where marketing becomes part of the plan because it's all based on this holistic approach in which, for example, residents and community will increasingly take part, because we've seen the examples around the world where the residents become irritated because of the proximity of the industry
So
to
many
their
European
lives.
destinations.
Exactly. And I think that the branding endeavor will start taking that more into account, which is fine because it'll mean that it'll be a more interactive process in defining the destination. And at the end of the day, it's brand messaging.
And
So
it's
that's what
very
I think,
important here
yeah.
for the Middle East.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very important. Yes. The value of community cannot be, overemphasized.
So Joe, I'm going to get you, but are there any other questions? We've got a minute and a half. We've got a question.
Hi, I have a very quick question. Is it possible for a destination to market itself to death?
To market itself today.
To death.
To
Is
death.
there- yes. Is there a possibility of an overkill of any sort?
Yes,
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
there is. And I think that is
Yeah.
exactly when destinations, well, to be, if you look at, again, the holistic approach, if destinations have marketing as the only driver for the development of the offer,
That's a
then they
recipe
will
for-
market
yeah.
themselves to death. If they don't take into account the knowledge-based approach in which they're monitoring also the dynamics within the destination, if they don't take into account the true, characteristics of the destination, be they societal or natural, then yes, they will market themselves to death. And it means that the destination management part is becoming increasingly more important than necessarily the marketing part, because so we go back to that,
Delivering on the
everybody's traveling,
experience.
Yeah, I think, the sustainability of the destination is more important overall. You've got cases like Barcelona now who are suffering from over-tourism because for virtue of what they have, what their resources are, and what they've marketed themselves as, they're not able to cope with the amount of tourist arrivals in their city. And that's something both the tourism board and the ecosystem around it has to manage. What are the right expectations and targets to set in terms of what you want to achieve? If you keep marketing, getting more people in, but don't have the experience to support it, they might not come back. They might not talk to people about it, or they might have a great experience and tell everybody about it, and then you have a problem of how many people turn up in your destination.
I also believe that decision makers that do market to death will be out of business soon. The reason is, at the end of the day, everything depends on the return on investment. And if you're over marketing, then the returns are probably negative.
Diminishing returns.
So yeah, and then I just wanted to bring it full circle to the title of this event, which was also, I think everything that we mentioned actually comes full circle looking at high yield tourists. And that's, at the end of the day, all of the strategies and looking at the data and making evidence-based decisions. What that will do is enable you to target the right tourists, will inevitably mean the higher yield tourists as well. So everything that we're talking, actually, I know we didn't mention it per se, but everything that we're talking about, whether we don't have a China strategy or looking at the data, and all of that is geared towards getting that higher yield tourists. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want. You don't want the tourists that will come in, spend a little bit of money, and then leave and maybe not say anything.
But easier said than done, because every single one of the destinations that are in these halls have absolute visitor arrival targets. We need 20 more million visitors or 18 million visitors, and it becomes a dynamic between the political structures and the marketing boards that are playing this dance, and it's the marketers have to navigate this usually.
I actually think, just if I jump in here, I actually think that one of the things that might be beneficial that that researchers would do would then also start promoting new KPIs, because
Exactly.
I mean, unfortunately,
Quality,
the numbers, the
exactly.
real numbers
Yield.
of guests are still like the ones that are most obvious and most easily interpreted, whereas we would like to know how much benefits is each visitor, leaving behind. What is the impact on the local economy? How many jobs have been created? How is the national wallet, benefiting from tourism? But at the end of the day, the head count is easiest. So maybe you researchers, you just need to sit down and find us new KPIs that are also easily understandable.
We have to
There you go.
convince the politicians on that, which is a little bit harder to do. But no, definitely, I think you're completely right.
We are officially at 1:30, and we are done. Unless there's a question. There's a question in the back? There's a question in the back. You literally have the final word.
Okay, good afternoon. What do you think about online bookings, which are increasing, as you see, every year? And in terms of that, what do you think about FIT? What is going to happen for about in 5 years from now? Thank you.
So online bookings and FIT? Okay, so FIT and online bookings.
Yeah, at least from my perspective, I mean, everyone knows it's just continuing to grow and will continue to grow in the next 5 years. The impact of that, yes, I mean, it's definitely something that as marketers we need to take into consideration. I think for a lot of the reasons that we mentioned earlier, understanding what it is that drives FIT, tourism, what it is that people are looking for when they're on the platforms, and understanding that will enable us to actually market towards those individuals a little bit better. So it definitely, in terms of impact, a big impact that we make sure to address in every single strategy that we help marketing boards with.
Okay, Swatcha, I'm going to give you the last word on this.
Great.
Okay.
Online bookings definitely going to go increasing. You have to look at it where the technology penetration in different markets is and the internet penetration is. Places like the Nordic region, high penetration of technology and internet, they've gone completely online. For them, there are certain countries where they don't even have a travel office. That's their modus operandi. But you have other countries, it's also generations that are part of it, which generation where. So Russia, for instance, very much 40-60 split between online and offline still. So it's getting there. In a couple of years, yeah, we'll probably be 90% online, who knows.
But we're not discounting the importance of travel trade.
Yes.
And especially for new emerging destinations and new in air quotes destination like Saudi. When you're higher up in the path to purchase on the awareness side, there's the very important role that travel trade plays in generating awareness of a destination and then driving people through that travel consumer path to purchase. We are officially wrapped up. The panel are available if anyone has any questions. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you.